stay in Arizona, be a parent, and go to graduate school and write a thesis. I got my master's in applied criminology and wrote a 187-page thesis on the experiences of transgender inmates and mental health. When I started that paper, 10 resources would pop up on Google. If you Google transgender and criminal justice, 10. And they all cited each other. It's like, okay, well, that does no good. When I would search transgender broadly, there would only be about 10,000 total pop up. And that's having to do with anything that would have anything transgender in the whole world, right? It is search. Just the other day, 487,000 results. That's how much this has grown. How much it's expanded and blown up. That 2006, we didn't see anything else except for the Jerry Springer show, and once in a while Maury Povich when somebody would be crying or something like I cheated on you and you're really a man or something, Like we would look at it as a joke. That was only 10 years ago. A decade. Within my child's lifetime. I said, man, where are we going to be in 10 years from now? If we're already this far expanded and growing this much now. And I said, okay. So rejecting the label, I said, I'm going to reject the stereotype. If this is growing and more people are coming out as transgender and this is possible, then something must be right about it, right? The label itself of being mentally ill is trivialized, right? We look at something as being different as something wrong or sick. Well, that didn't answer the questions anymore. So with that whole spectrum of identities now being public and in the media, and we're looking at it as being beautiful, then there's questions, right? Everything that we thought we knew about transgender identity has now changed. So the DSM Criteria labels transgender identity as gender identity disorder, which is persistent discomfort with your sex, your biological genitalia, right? Persistent discomfort. Anybody ever been uncomfortable with their genitalia? I mean, come on, what does that mean exactly? Persistent discomfort with biological sex. Well, if you have to look at those media representations, then we all can fall under that, right? Clinical distress or impairment in social, occupational, and other important areas of functioning. Well, I seem to do okay. When I first looked at it, it was right next to like antisocial personality disorder. I thought to myself, man, that's not me either. So prime debates and conflicts is the advocates say, okay, well, this is not a choice. I was born this way, and there is nothing wrong with me, and you all need to accept me. You need to change laws to make it so that I'm accepted. Right? And sex and gender are different. And sexual orientation and sexuality is different too. And that's what the advocates are crying, right? That this is normal. You need to protect us all as humans. This is violating my rights. Well, the conservative side is saying, nope, nope, nope. This is a choice. Your illness might be the diagnosis, but the fact that you want to express it, that's a choice. And the fact that you want to choose to express it means that it's unnatural. It's wrong. The law says so. The American Psychiatric Association says so. And so does the church. What do you have now? A bunch of stories. And that's what they try and argue, right, on that conservative side. Cure the disease. But when I started to look back in history and I started to realize that, hey, I've got to find some history and know a little bit more about, I'm going to make sure I'm staying on time, and learn more about myself, right? And figure out where really did I come from. If I don't feel like I was born in the wrong body and there's nothing wrong with me, then there has to be something else telling me the truth. So I found that Native Americans and the Navajo tribes had 9 different languages for the term gender. And that they didn't believe in homosexuality because of the fact that no two genders are alike. So it's impossible to love somebody of the same gender. I thought, well, that's really neat. And they had this story of Bernard-shaped people, right? I got to find out what the really true meaning of faggot is. I thought that it was a bundle of sticks in the dictionary, right? That's what it says. You know where it really came from? They would take 2 Native American people that were considered two-spirit, where they couldn't tell men expressing themselves as women. They would tie them back to back, light them on fire alive. Hence the term faggot. Reality. Right? This is what we know, but we don't know. Because that history has been erased. You know the famous picture, and I should have included in here, of Adolf Hitler, and he's outside a big burning building with a big pile of burning books, and he's throwing books into the middle of fire? Remember that picture? Okay, I liked World War II more than some people, I guess, but I was fascinated by that era. There was a transgender man who inherited billions, and he went all around the world collecting anything he could on gender and sexuality. And he said, I'm going to be able to leave a legacy that tells a positive side of our story. Well, he opened the museum in Berlin. Well, what happened in Berlin in 1943? They destroyed this museum and every single thing that ever existed on transgender identity in history. So all that was left is this. And I said, okay, well, in 1990 they coined the term Two-Spirit, but it's only a Native American term, not to be shared with other people. So I was back to square one going, okay, well, I'm not Native American, but it's the only thing that I can identify with positively, that it's okay to encompass both genders. They were put up on basically pedestals, taken as concubines by the tribal leaders, and were considered to be the balance of the tribes, and they would look to them as leaders to balance the genders. They were special. It wasn't until later that somebody else said that this is wrong. So where's that history now? Well, most Native Americans don't even know that that history exists because it's been erased. Because it's something that they see as tarnishing their history. We don't want to admit that these people existed in our history, because then we'll admit that we don't fit the rest of the status quo. So faced with a double-edged sword, you look at the healthcare and the gender identity disorder diagnosis. In order to get any hormones, in order to seek out care, in order to do anything beyond just identifying, you have to get a gender identity diagnosis. That means you accept and embrace the mental illness identity. You can believe all you want that you're not sick, but you have to admit it in order to get help. Right? It's the way it still is. And it's not going to change anytime in the near future. Right? Because choosing rights to internalize the label, but what we don't recognize in mental health care is that 87% of transgender people suffer from mental illness other than their transgender identity. So it means there might be bipolar disorder, depression, all kinds of other stuff, but not the transgender identity. So rapid change in the last 10 years, there was like a race on how many laws and policies can we change all at once, because the transgender, well, broadly the LGBT community believed that if we just changed all the policies, then that would change the way the culture believed, right? Because now they would have to respect everybody. So the first thing that started was we started looking at human rights in prisons. We passed the Prison Rape Elimination Act in 2003, and then later on, we started to look at basically how much rape is happening in prisons. And that it's not just an issue in one aspect or another, but that it's a huge problem, and that the HIV rates are increasing. So in 2008, one transgender person, inmate, filed charges and said, or filed a lawsuit and said, "This is cruel and unusual punishment to put me in solitary confinement or leave me in a cell with a person who's going to rape and abuse me and stand there and laugh." They would stand there and laugh at her, took away her hormones, and left her in there to die. So she sued, and she won. And then in 2010, another transgender client said, or I say client because I work in mental health care now, transgender inmate filed a lawsuit and said, "You took away my hormones, you're saying that this is cosmetic, but I need this. I'm sick without my hormones." And so looking at the justice system and saying, okay, these changes are starting to happen, so once all these policies started to impact the way the culture was seeing mental health care, to say, okay, well, these people might have committed crimes, but they're now within your institution and they're mentally ill and you need to provide services for them. And it is required as of 2010. So whether you like it or not, you have to provide provisions. Well, guess what? They don't have transgender cell blocks in prisons, so they throw them all in solitary confinement. So while I'm reading, researching, and writing my thesis in college, I'm finding out that transgender people are cutting off their genitalia, flushing it down the toilet, killing themselves, being raped, murdered, and the rate of HIV infection among transgender inmates is over 75%. And then when I was working post-litigation work for wrongful conviction cases, I came across a case of a transgender woman in Mississippi who was taking care of her mom who had multiple sclerosis and her brother who had mental retardation of some kind, I forget. And she was a prostitute. She had been raped and beaten about 17 years earlier, and she was missing one eye. So the only thing that she could find for suitable work, because she was an African-American, one-eyed, transgender woman in Mississippi, was doing prostitution. And that's how she took care of her family. Well, she needed clothing, so she went to Kohl's in Mississippi and was looking at bras, and she was planning on purchasing them, but they started harassing her in the store, so she said, screw this, and she decides to pocket the bras and walk out of the store. She was caught, charged, and convicted because Mississippi is a 3-strike state law, and because the bras each were priced over $50, they could charge it with 3 consecutive felonies, which means life in prison without the possibility of parole, in solitary confinement, with 23.5 hours of light and no human contact for the rest of her life. For stealing bras! I said, this is messed up. I can't do this. I'm done. Because there was nothing I could do. I couldn't file any papers or anything because A, I was not in the same state, and she hadn't filed her appeal within 1 year of her conviction because she didn't have a defense attorney. And because she didn't file the appeal within 1 year, she's stuck there forever. And I said, now I got to figure out what I want to do differently. There are medical needs that were in the shadows of the chaos. All this stuff is happening, right? But the symptoms based in HRT, which is hormone replacement therapy, is HRT. So once we put all these, we say, okay, we're going to take care of all the transgender people. We're going to stick them all on hormones. And that's going to solve the problem, right? That's going to solve the riddle. Everything's going to be better if we just let them transition and be themselves, right? No, not true. Because you take somebody and you're putting them through puberty. You're putting a hormone in their body that doesn't naturally be produced there, forcing their body into the aging process. For myself, I went through menopause and male puberty at the same time. I wanted to have sex with everything that walked, but don't touch me. All right? I was a bitch. I was not happy. I was having hot flashes. My throat hurt all the time because my voice was changing. I had acne. I had pimples. I was angry. I wasn't getting along with people. The way people were accepting my message, where I was a advocate lesbian, in college that everybody was excited to have speak in their classroom. Now I look like a very angry man who's very red. And I'm talking about these things very sternly, and I was like, man, I got to change my delivery. Like people were getting scared. I was like, okay, sorry. So I was getting more and more angry that, okay, well now we're changing everything, but we're not saying how to change it. We're not telling people what to do after the fact, after we change everything. So nothing's actually changing. Things aren't getting better, and I still don't have answers. So finding out that other transgender people avoided mental health services. Why? Well, you saw the stats. They're scared. They're getting diagnosed with other mental disorders instead of their gender identity disorder. And then we're treating other aspects of the symptoms. So they're like, well, screw you. I don't want to go back. I don't want to see the counselors. I don't want to see the psychiatrists because you don't know anything anyway. And I said, man, that's really hard. So I'm working with these medical professionals on one side in training, and then working with my own community on the other and going, wow, there's a huge divide here, right? And bathrooms, don't even get me started. I still have issues. I was on a conference call the other day for 2 hours just about the state bathroom policies. I was like, look, is this really this important that we're not going to? Yes, because you know what they're doing now? As of, I think it was last month, Houston, Texas passed the city ordinance that transgender people must, well, it's not passed yet, it's put on the ballot, that transgender people will have to carry their birth certificates or some form of legal documentation, and they will be required to use the bathroom of their biological sex. And if they don't, it's a felony. Felony to pee. So when I'm working for the, right. So when I was working for the university, and you got a job working for the university, and I'll get to that in a second, I was really pissed off with this policy. When I first saw it, I said, that's ridiculous. You're going to make me use the women's restroom? Look at me! Can you imagine me going in the women's restroom? And then coming out, somebody's boyfriend, husband would whoop my butt and say, why were you in there? So they're not thinking, they're doing these policies. So you know what I did? I was pissed off. I said, well, screw you, I'm mad. And y'all aren't hearing me. So I took one of those sex offender notices, and I put my face and my birth certificate on it, And I posted that sucker on every single campus women's restroom all over the community. I posted it nationally. I would send it to Boston News, LA News, Phoenix News, anyone who would listen. I had over 11,000 hits in 24 hours. Governor Jan Brewer called my boss within 2 hours of my post. And they said, get your ass in this office now. I said, oh dear. So I got to the office and they said, because you work for a state institution, you can't take a stance on a partisan issue. So I'm working for a university doing LGBT stuff to help students feel better about themselves, but I'm not going to do anything about a policy that's going to directly affect me. You're out of your mind. And so they said, take it down or you lose your job. I said, okay, fine. But guess what? It disappeared 24 hours later, no longer on the ballot. So maybe it did something, maybe it didn't, but I was sure one pissed off advocate. So I was hired after I finished graduate school, finished the thesis, all of that. I was hired by Northern Arizona University. I was laying by the pool on 4th of July. I just got custody of my daughter, and they said, President's office calls me. Hello? Hey, Chris, what are you doing? I said, what do you mean? What do you mean what I'm doing? It's 4th of July. Hey, remember that proposal you put in 2007 where you wanted an LGBT person hired to like create a program that would help, LGBT students? How would you like to create it now? Sure. Okay. So they gave me $19,000 in 10 months, $1,000 budget, and said, have at it, do whatever you want. I had no boss. They gave me a closet as my office. Shit, it was an old dean's office. But I said, well, this is interesting. So they wouldn't let me change the women's bathroom. That was literally like from here to here, from my door to a gender-neutral restroom, because it was a women's bathroom, and they had to keep a certain amount in the building. I said, come on, it's right next to my door. But nope. So they gave me this opportunity and said, make it happen. If you fail to make it happen, then it ceases to exist. And I said, hey, no pressure. It'll never happen if you don't do it. Sure, no problem. I just graduated from graduate school. I had a green mohawk, gauges, lip piercings, eyebrow piercings. I looked like something out of a heavy metal band. And I said, hey, I've been writing a thesis for 3 years. And I said, I promise it'll be gone by the time I get hired. So it did. And so within 2 years, we had 11 staff, 156 model programs and events by the program's completion in 2 years. We got $4 million in funding, and we implemented that sucker on campus. And in that 2 years, when they did the nationwide study for HRC, for most inclusive counties for gay marriage, Coconino County came in at #1 with the biggest impact ratio than any other county in the entire United States. It was an awesome program. Thank you. So we had the most positive impact percentage also on students than any other program that had ever existed in the university in history, impacting over 1,600 students in 1 year. It was incredible. Had a blast. But also by the time I hit like October, November, December, when all those students were going home to their families and telling them that they were gay, lesbian, transgender, and their parents would disown them, had 13 kids the week after Thanksgiving come to me and want to commit suicide, or had attempted already. It was overwhelming. Everything that I thought I was doing in like leadership to empower, I was getting all the kids that were broken. They didn't feel like they had anywhere to go. They didn't feel like they had a safe place to go. And I said, man, I wish I worked in the field of mental health. I feel like I could do something then. I got in trouble for like doing kind of pseudo-counseling because none of the kids wanted to go to the counseling center. They said, we don't feel safe there. I had one kid that would tremble so bad if even they saw the building. Because some psychiatrist, way back when, had doped them up full of medication. They were terrified. They didn't want to ever feel that way again. I said, man, maybe I should look into something else. So, at the same time, I had secrets of my own. I was drinking every single day. I was working 111 hours a week on average. Wasn't sleeping. Everything I knew of myself was what others had defined me as. And I had finally felt like I had arrived. I'd become somebody, right? I'd done something great. Had something to show for all my hard work and effort. But I was lost. I was lonely. I didn't know who I was. I was a 16-year-old boy stuck in a 30-year-old man's body. Or a 36-year-old woman's body, however you want to look at that. And I was experiencing menopause as like a 50-year-old woman. I was a mess. And so I was falling apart, and I said, man, I've been working with mental health professionals and doctors and everything for years, and I had like a team of 5 people on my team. I had to sign a little waiver that says, if you take these hormones and you die, it's your own damn fault. You can't hold the doctor liable. I was willing to do anything. So I had an awesome doctor, an awesome psychiatrist, an awesome counselor, and after 8 years of counseling with my counselor, I saw her every 2 weeks. We became quite close. And she looks at me and she says, man, you know what, Chris? I hope you don't hate me, but I'm going to question you for the first time in our entire relationship. Are you sure you don't suffer from other mental illness? Blew me away. I was like a mix of angry, sad, scared, fearful, going, now I'm on all these hormones. Now there's no going back. I'm 2-3 years in. I'm a leader of this program, and what's going to happen to me now? I started looking at mortality studies and finding that transgender people were dying of a rate. They did a study of 1,000 transgender people that they were going to look at over 10 years that were all on hormones. By year 4, 43% of those transgender people that they were looking at were dead. I said, that's what I'm facing. I'm going to die. I'd black out and find myself on the floor face down and not know what was wrong with me. And then I went to my doctor next after my counselor said that. I was just blown away. And I went to my doctor and I said, what the hell's wrong with me? And they did all my blood work and said, oh yeah, everything's fine. You're fine. I went to my other friend, a nurse practitioner. I said, God, what is wrong with me, Wendy? What's wrong with me? And she said, tell you what I'm going to do. There's nothing wrong with you. Okay, there's something wrong with me. I'm having a heart rate of like 150 sometimes. Like I'm dropping in front of audiences, like shaking and can't, what's wrong with me? And she said, 5 o'clock, my office, meet me there. Okay, bring sweats. I said, okay. So I showed up at 5 o'clock. She said, we're going to do yoga. So you are out of your damn mind if you think I'm going to be doing some yoga. I was like, I did not become a man to become a fairy, okay? So, don't get me wrong though. I love me some yoga. And my daughter gets to make fun of me on a regular basis when she sees me doing like the, downward facing dog and stuff in the living room. I do not care. That saved my life. Breathing exercises, talk therapy, praying, things that other people had recommended that were quite normal were actually working. So I said, well, screw this. It's definitely the job right now. I need to do something. I need to figure out who I really am. Because if I'm not really mentally ill and there is nothing wrong with me and I don't want to die, I got to figure out who the hell am I. So I told my daughter, I said, give me 6 months to get my shit together. I'm going to send you back to go live with your dad. And in 6 months you can come back. And when you do, we're going to go on a very big trip. And so it took me about a year to sell everything I owned. I had a 3,000 square foot house with multiple cars and toys. I had a good time while I was working at the university. And got to the end, and guess what? None of it made me happy anyway. All I really wanted was my family and happiness and joy, and I didn't know what any of those felt like. And so I went on this very big trip, and we traveled all over the place. We had a lot of funny experiences. My daughter, myself, and my other transgender friend was going the other direction and left for the same reasons. We just got to get out of here. We had $400 in our pocket, and I bought a 1972 Cardinal travel trailer, little 12-foot with no bathroom in it, cute little TV set. Look, isn't that cute? Little cute thing. We didn't have running water, no bathroom, and we hit the road. I spin fire, so I was like, I'll spin fire on beaches, make some money that way. I'm just going to discover. Unenrolled my daughter from school. They said, where's she going next?